Right guys, welcome back to the channel. Pleased to have you join me today, and today we're going to talk about budget adventure bikes. So this is something I've been looking into a lot recently. I've collated all this information myself and I'm going to share it with you if you're in the market for a middleweight adventure bike, the sort of 4, 5, 6 grand mark. Then stick around and I'll go over all of the information. Hopefully it's really useful. Okay. So diving in, today we're going to compare bikes such as the Royal Enfield Himalayan, the Honda CBX500, which is a really popular middleweight, sort of the go-to adventure bike, the Chinese manufacturer Voge with their 500 DSX. They also have a 650 DSX as well, but we'll just stick to the 500 for this comparison. And then also the Benelli TX502x, which is the adventure version of the 502, and it's Italy's most popular selling bike at the moment, full stop. So very, very good contenders. All right, so let's start then by just looking at the basis of all of the bikes. The Himalayan is a lower entry point bike coming in at £4,699. If we go over to the Honda, it's no surprise because it's the most established brand, is the most expensive at £6,599. The Voge, being relatively new to the market, is priced competitively at £5,499. If you want the less adventure spec version, you can get a couple of £100 off and opt for the Voge 500DS that doesn't have as much of a crossover tyre, doesn't have spoked wheels, has cast wheels instead. And finally, you've got the Benelli, which is coming in at £5,999, and that's on the road as well for the Benelli. So all of those bikes are around about the 5 to 6.5 grand mark, and they've all got advantages and disadvantages. If we look at the power and torque output, well, you've got the Himalayan unfortunately coming in last with 24.3 brake horsepower, but also 32 foot-pounds of torque. So obviously it's a single, so you're going to have a good torque output. The Honda is coming in at almost 47 bhp with 43 foot-pounds of torque. That's from its 471cc parallel twin. The Voge is very similar, a little bit higher torque actually on the Voge, but you'd expect those engines to output the same power because we suspect that the Voge motor is a close copy of the Honda motor. So the Voge is sporting the KE500 unit from Lonsin. Benelli's got the biggest displacement of all the bikes here today, and it's outputting 47, almost 48 if you round it up, horsepower, and 46 Newton meters of torque. So it looks like the Benelli is the best in terms of power output, but it's not much ahead of the Honda and the Voge, and it also weighs a lot more. So Benelli, of all of the bikes, is probably one of the most full-sized adventure bikes. So if you look at price and power normalized, and this is a number that you want to be higher basically, so you want to have the most power normalized for the investment level. The Himalayan actually comes in last. So although the Himalayan is the cheapest, the power output is pretty low. The Honda is powerful but expensive, and the Benelli is expensive but not quite as powerful as the Honda. In this metric, the Voge actually comes out in a better shape because you get quite a lot of power for your investment. So overall, we've got a big spread of bikes here. Obviously, power and torque is not just bragging rights. If you're adventuring, you need to carry luggage, perhaps you're two up. You may want to go some distance on the highway, and so cruising at speed is going to be something you require. And in that aspect, the Himalayan is something which probably doesn't do as well as the others. And that leads me on to long distance touring. So we've talked about the power output of the bikes. More or less, the Benelli, the Voge, and the Honda are quite similar. They're all parallel twins. They're close to 500cc. The max speed of the Voge and the Honda is 100 miles an hour. The Benelli is a little bit faster at 110, and this is user feedback. This is what people have actually said. The Royal Enfield Himalayan is quoted as a max speed of 79 miles per hour, but owner reviews say that it might actually be closer to 75. So If the bike's maximum speed is 75, you're going to be pushing it to get to that speed, and it's also not going to feel very comfortable maintaining that speed almost flat out for a long period of time. Now let's talk about weight, obviously, because we talked about power, but power to weight is important. And also, adventure bikes are by their nature heavy, but the lighter the bike is, especially in the middleweight class, the better really. So the Himalayan and the Honda are actually tied for first place here, a smidgen under 200 kg, so they're at 199 kg each. The Voge, being similar in characteristics to the Honda, actually is a little bit heavier, so it comes in at 206 kg. These are fueled weights. The Benelli is a bit of a monster out of the group, so it's at 235 kg. It's 220 without any liquids in it. And so the Benelli, I've actually experienced the Benelli myself. It's quite difficult to push it off the side stand and get it into an upright position. It is also not that easy to put your feet flat on the floor on the Benelli, so you're sort of like straining to lift it up. The Voge and the Honda are both okay from that respect, and the Himalayan, yeah, it's quite easy to maneuver. It's light enough, and the seat height is low enough. Okay, so let's talk about fuel economy and tank size. So let's talk about tank size first. Well, the Benelli wins that aspect. It's got a 20 litre tank. Honda comes in second with an almost 18 litre tank, 17.7 litres. The Voge is third with 16.5 litres, and the Himalayan comes in at 3.3 imperial gallons, which when we calculate it is 15 litres. So the quoted MPG of the Voge and the Honda is 75. Actually 80 for the Voge, and the real world MPG for the Benelli is about 49. Some people say higher, and the Himalayan surprisingly is quoted high, but real world is about 50. I'd imagine the Voge and the Honda also have lower real world MPG figures than the manufacturer suggests, because it all depends on weight, your air resistance, if you're carrying a lot of luggage as well, whether you're carrying a pillion, and whether you're going up and down hills or it's just flat out cruising. So let's not take the MPG figures quoted by the manufacturer too seriously. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the chassis. So we'll start at the ground and work our way up. The Himalayan actually has the most advantages when it comes to off-road work, because it's got a 21-inch front wheel, 17-inch rear. Those are spoked affairs, and they're actually equipped with Seat tyres. And Seat, even though you may not have heard of it in the UK, is actually a well-established Indian brand, and it's a subsidiary of Pirelli. It's been around for 100 years. So those are equipped on various Royal Enfield models, and they are quite good tyres, to be fair. Now, the next one is, of course, the Honda, and it's coming with a 19-inch front, a 17-inch rear, but it's cast, so the wheels are cast aluminium, not spoked. It's the only one of the test that isn't fitted with spoked wheels. The Voge, again, very similar. You're looking at 19-inch front, 17-inch rear wheel, and those are equipped with the Metzeler Torrance, which is sort of a, how would you say, probably an 80-20 tyre, mostly made for road work. If you want to look at a Voge which is probably more weighted towards off-road, then the 650 DSX comes with, I think it's Pirelli Scorpion Rally tyres, which are more of a 50-50 tyre. Okay, so finally, last but not least, let's look at the wheels of the Benelli. And again, you've got 19-inch front, 17-inch rear, but it's fitted with iron spokes. So the reliability and sort of long-lastingness of those is yet to be determined. And those wheels are wrapped in Metzeler Torrance tyres again. Okay, so suspension, all quite similar in the suspension department. These are budget bikes, so you don't have that much high-end components. Maybe with the Voge and the Honda being exceptions. So in the rear suspension, all of them have got adjustable preload, with the exception of the Benelli, which actually has spring preload, rebound, and compression setting adjustment, apparently. So it looks like the Benelli, although it doesn't have branded suspension, actually has the most adjustability. Let's talk about the front forks. So the Honda is coming with Showa, and bear in mind that's only the 2022 Honda CB500X, so be careful if you're looking at an outdated model. As that will come with less premium suspension components. It also comes with only one disc up front, but the new version has 2 discs up front. So these are Showa single fork function, so a bimodal upside down forks, 41mm, and they're actually in gold, which looks quite good. The Royal Enfield has the best suspension travel, 200mm, so again, contributing to more of its off-road presence, off-road ability. They're Royal Enfield branded suspension forks. The Voge actually is a little bit of a surprise here. It's got upside down forks, but they're KYB, both front and rear actually by that Japanese manufacturer. So that's a tick in the box of Voge because they've got good suspension. And then when we talk about finally the Benelli, again, it's got upside down forks. They're not branded, but they are 140mm travel, which is less than the Himalayan, but still better than the Honda and the Voge. Okay, so talking about brakes, none of these bikes have got a huge power output, so we don't really need the top of the line braking components. The Himalayan, it's got the lowest power, so you've got a 300mm single disc up front, 200mm rear. The Honda's got 296mm dual, remember in the 2022 model it's got dual 240mm rear. And then when we look at the Voge, surprisingly the Voge has got high quality brakes. For the price points, you're at Nissin 298mm dual at the front and 240mm at the rear. And last but not least, the big Benelli, remember it weighs 230 kg, it's got the biggest discs. So you've got dual brakes discs up front, you've got dual discs up front, 320mm on each disc, and then also a bigger rear disc of 260mm. All of the bikes have got 6-speed, with the exception of the Himalayan. So the 6 gear is going to help a lot if you're doing a lot of miles. And the build quality, I'd say, of the Himalayan is really good, as is most Royal Enfields. A little bit of corrosion on the parts underneath. I'd say that Honda obviously probably got the best build quality of the group because they're an established Japanese manufacturer. The Voge is actually surprisingly very good. It is a Chinese bike. It is made by Losin, but all the reviews have said that the build quality of the Voge is excellent. So that's another good one to look out for. The Benelli, I'd say that's probably good. It's not quite up there with the others in my experience. I've had a look around the Benelli. I've fiddled with the components and the accessories. The screen is a little bit cheap looking. So is the USB port. So is some of the plastics, which are making up the front fairing of the bike. Let's talk about ground clearance as well before we forget, and seat height. So ground clearance of the Himalayan is 220mm. I think you get a bash guard on the Himalayan as well. I'll double check that. Whereas seat height is 800, so you've got high ground clearance but a low seat height on the Himalayan, which is quite a nice combination. The Honda and the Voge have quite low ground clearance, 180 on the Honda, that's millimeters, 185 on the Voge. You've got a tiny bit more on the Voge, and both have an 830mm seat height. I'm 5'11", I can flat foot the Voge quite easily, so I imagine the Honda would be the same. And then finally we've got the Benelli, which again, living up to its sort of big adventure bike presence, it's got 220mm ground clearance, which is the same as the Himalayan, but an 840mm seat. So you might need to get, I think they do an aftermarket seat, which is lower. If you are shorter stature, that might help. Let's talk about some optional extras now with these bikes. And obviously we talked about the base prices, 4,700 for the Himi. The Benelli, I think, was just a few pence under 6k. The Honda is 6.3 and the Voge is 5.5k. So let's talk about what you actually get for that money. Do you get Bluetooth on these bikes? Well, the Himalayan does have the Tripper Navigator, which is a nice feature. And this is an LCD unit that connects via your phone to Google Maps, and then you get a little readout which tells you which direction to turn in and how many yards there is before that turn comes up. So it's quite useful. Bluetooth does connect to that. On the Honda, you don't get Bluetooth. On the Voge, you actually do. So the Voge is ticking a box in the accessories or features category. You've got Bluetooth, so you can connect your phone, you can answer calls through the LCD display. Sorry, it's a TFT on the Voge. And finally, the Benelli doesn't have that feature. Talking of the displays, well, the Royal Enfield has both LED and a TFT if you count the Tripper. The majority of the instrument cluster for the Royal Enfield is LCD. The Honda has again LCD, which is liquid crystal display. It looks quite good on the Honda. People say it's quite useful. You've got the gear indicator, revs. I think you have also a shift light as well on the Honda. So though it's not a fancy screen, it is quite functional, which is good. The Voge is the surprise with the full colour TFT with loads of information on, nice and clear, looks great. So that's a nice feature to have on there, alongside the Bluetooth. The Benelli has an LCD screen which doesn't really look that nice in my opinion. I'll show you some pictures of that so you get an idea of it. So none of these bikes have cruise control. You're not really going to get that in this market segment, this sort of entry-level adventure bike. None of the bikes have heated grips as standard, so you're going to have to fit aftermarket heated grips. If you want them on the Honda, then Honda will fit them from factory. However, it's £357 for Honda heated grips. So this is where you're seeing that sort of premium brand coming with premium prices for accessories on the bike. Talk about a charging socket. They all have a charging socket. So the Voge has one just in front of the TFT. The Benelli has one built into the tank fairing on the left-hand side that you flip a lid up. It doesn't look that nice, the Benelli's one, but it is there and it is useful. And finally, the Honda, I'm sorry, I missed the Himalayan. The Himalayan has it. The Honda has one, but it's a £24 option. So again, it's a little bit annoying. You have to pay extras for the Honda. Similar story with the side stand and main stand. You need the main stand if you're going to be doing any repair work in the field on the bike. They've all got it as standard, apart from the Honda, which is £152 optional extra. So that's a pain. So if you are going to buy the standard CB500X, you're not going to get a center stand. Okay, finally, let's talk about pannier kits. All bikes have pannier kits available for them. So alongside the center stand, this is one of these really required and necessary extras. I'll start with the Voge. If you pay an extra £500 when you're purchasing the motorcycle, they'll fit Voge branded panniers. And you've got pannier boxes, which are aluminium boxes, and the aluminium top box. It's really good quality, actually. I'll show you some pictures of the Voge aluminium boxes, cases. So that's £500, so that pushes the price up to £6,000 if you're going to have that. They were giving out 3 pannier kit with the first 30 customers to order these bikes. And keep that in mind, because when Voge are releasing a new model, I won't get distracted too much because I know that there's this video is about a comparison, but they are bringing out a 525. So look out for those deals with free luggage, because that's going to be really, really helpful. It's almost a 10% reduction, isn't it, if you get the free luggage. Okay, so moving on to the Himalayan. Again, it's £500 for the panniers, which are boxes. So that's quite good value as well from Royal Enfield. We like that. The Himalayan comes as standard with all the framework and everything like that. So you've got options to bolt on these panniers from Royal Enfield. So the Benelli actually has luggage options supplied by Givi, both Italian companies, so it kind of makes sense they would partner in this respect. But if you add all of the frames and the luggage, the top box and the panniers to give comparative storage capacity, you look at £750. So it's 50% more expensive than the Royal Enfield and the Voge. It's a little bit more. And then, wow, in last place, you've got the Honda, because if you were to equip the Honda with the supplied luggage, you're going to be looking at £1,342. So that really is quite expensive, considering it's not even aluminium boxes that are lockable. It is plastic luggage. So that's not as good in my opinion. There might be aftermarket options for the Honda, but it's definitely a downside to buying that bike. Okay, let's talk about the engine guards and this sort of tubular frame that protects the bike if you have a spill. The Himalayan has it as standard. They have guards on the top fairing. Now they're not going to cover all of the engine and all of the lower part of the bike, but they will protect the top fairing. It also allows you to fit luggage to the front of the Hemi as well, which is quite nice. So Himalayan are probably quite well equipped there. Voge also has a bar that comes up almost from the cylinder head and then links in a sort of loop that goes around the front beak of the fairing. It doesn't look that substantial, so I wouldn't really want to test it, but it may save you if you're just a slow speed spill and you just drop the bike gently, which can happen. Then maybe you'd get away with not damaging anything. The Honda is, again, it's an expensive optional extra, so it's 252 quid to have the engine bars fitted, which is quite expensive, isn't it? The Benelli also has engine bars as an optional extra, but you're looking at £154.99 for that, so £155 to have those engine bars fitted. A few other features: can you disengage the ABS? Well, you can't on the Honda, you can't on the Himalayan, but you can on the Voge. So it's a button on the handlebars, allows you to disengage ABS for off-road work. And actually on the Benelli, you've got the best option. You can press to disengage the rear only, whereas the front ABS is still functional. So that's quite useful. Finally, let's talk about service intervals. The service interval on the Himalayan is Royal Enfield standard, so 3,000 miles, which is quite short. Same on the Voge, that's a short service. But bear in mind with these bikes which have short service intervals, sometimes every other service is actually changing oil, filter, valve clearance, that kind of thing. And then the other service is basically a check, lubricate, adjust. So it's a kind of very, very minor service. Doesn't totally offset the fact that you've got to take it to the dealer every 3,000 miles, but it is something that people seem to forget in the comments. They just think, oh my God, it's 3,000 miles. And it's not a true reflection in the investment in servicing. People just see a difference in 8,000 miles, 3,000 miles. Oh wow, that's terrible. But if you look a bit deeper, it's not as different as it looks. The Honda is the best for service intervals, 8,000 miles between intervals. So that's going to allow you to go for big, long tours without worrying about going over your mileage. And the Benelli is actually quite low as well, 4,000 miles, but the valve check is only at 16,000 miles. I'm going to finish with some comments distilled from various reviews about the bikes. Hopefully it's useful for you. The Himalayan, a very good off-road, great suspension travel. It has removable peg inserts. The tyres aren't excellent as standard, and the power is not enough for long highway riding. But that said, I mean, it got itchy boots all around the world. So if that's not testament enough for the Hemi, then nothing is. I will also add about the Hemi, there is rumours about Himalayan 450 coming out. So they're going to increase the capacity of the single from 411cc up to 450, and that will help bump the power up from 24.5 bhp all the way up to about 45 or 40 I think it was. So if you're interested in the Hemi, don't dismiss it straight away, because there might be a useful update for that bike coming. That will give you a combination of enough power from a single, so still quite a narrow frame, and also enough off-road capability. So let's talk about the Honda. Of course, it's the established brand. You're going to have strong resale values, a huge number of spare parts, a wide range of aftermarket accessories for the bike. Also a good base of enthusiastic owners and clubs who are going to help you, give you advice about the bike if you are planning on going on trips or modifying it. We'll come on now to the Voge. Voge, his main downside is probably the dealer network is not as established as, say, the other bikes. I'd probably rank them as Honda first, then Royal Enfield, then Benelli, then Voge. The quality reputation isn't established fully yet, and this is obviously a Chinese bike. Most reviewers have said that the quality on the Voge is up to that with the Honda. However, it hasn't had the test of time. So we could be right, and it could be as good as Japanese bikes, or after a few years you could start to see things start to deteriorate. The other good thing about the Voge is its price to performance, and even better than this, price for technology ratio is incredibly high. So with the Voge, you've got the TFT display, you've got quality suspension components, you've got fairly good tyres. Okay, they are mid-range, but they're quite good. Bluetooth, tyre pressure monitoring. You've got brakes from Nissan. So the Voge gives you a lot for the money. So let's just see that as a payoff. Really, you get a lot, but we'll have to wait and see for the quality over time, and the dealer network needs to be expanded. Finally, the Benelli. Benelli gets excellent reviews as well. I mean, it's Italy's top-selling motorcycle, but quality is a little bit questionable. The owners seem to love them though. It's got that big adventure bike feel, so there's it's a sizable beast. You can carry a lot of luggage. It seems to perform well. It's got the highest top speed, so that means it's going to be powerful enough to carry luggage and also a pillion if you wanted at legal speed limits in most countries. So Benelli for me, the fit and finish of the Benelli probably lets it down a little bit. Like I talked about the display earlier, it's not quite that nice, and the USB chargers looks like an afterthought. Some of the bits down below in the frame of the motorcycle and the exhaust just look a little bit sort of low budget. But overall, people love the Benelli. It's got to be doing something right. Okay guys, well thanks a lot for listening to this overview video. Hope you found it interesting. If you do own any of these motorcycles, then please do write down in the comments what your experience is of them, because we can all learn together. I'd really appreciate that. If you do like the video, then please do give me a like. Obviously I've taken time to put this content together for you. It'd be nice if you just dropped a like to show your appreciation. And yeah, if you really like the video, then please do subscribe to the channel, and I would love to see you on the next one.